Okay, so now that we've talked about what happens with an individual muscle cell, an individual myofiber, whenever you get stimulation and it causes a contraction, we need to talk about the muscle as a whole. If you remember, here is the muscle as a whole. So when we've been talking about a twitch, we're talking about one cell that goes this length. But this muscle actually works together. And so how do all of those twitches, all of the trep, all of the tetanus, incomplete and complete, the wave summation, how do they all work together within this entire muscle to allow us to move a bone? Okay, and so that's what I'd like to talk about at this point. And so what we need to talk about is we need to talk about this thing called a motor unit. Okay, so what we're going to see here is this is showing the entire muscle. Okay, so this would be the same as this entire muscle. And notice each one of these circles is going to be an individual muscle cell. Now you can see from here they're different colors. And so why are they different colors? Well, it turns out that we don't just have one motor neuron going and hitting a muscle. We're going to have several motor neurons that carry nervous impulses, and they're going to go and touch cells within this muscle. Now, notice that they're color-coded. So this red motor neuron, it is going to touch a certain number of these muscle cells. The blue motor neuron touches the blue ones, and the purple one touches the purple ones. What we call this, one motor neuron, and all of the muscle cells that it controls is called a motor unit. And each entire muscle is almost always going to be made up of more than one motor unit. Okay, so how does this work together? Okay, let's make sure we can read this graph. So here we're talking about time. So time is passing as we move to the right. Here we're talking about tension. Okay, and what we're going to see is that we alternate between motor units. Okay, so here maybe some sort of, so here we've got the red motor unit, it's contracting, and then those cells may need to relax. And so they start relaxing, but let's say we want to keep that muscle contracted. We want to keep this overall muscle contraction high. Well, we just switch to a different motor unit. And when that one's ready to relax, we now get a third motor unit. And so by alternating stimulation of motor units, we can keep contraction happening in the overall muscle. Now what do we do if we want the tension, overall muscle tension, to increase? Well, we just recruit more motor units. So rather than alternating, maybe we'll have two contracted at once. And that can get us even higher muscle tension. And then what we can also do is we can switch. Maybe one motor unit, we can have trep, and then we can switch to wave summation, incomplete tetanus. So we can combine those things that we talked about on the last homework page with the concept of motor units to give us an overall muscle contraction. Okay? So if we're looking here at our notes packet, all right, a motor unit is going to be one motor neuron, and all of the myofibers, which if you remember are muscle cells, that it controls. And recruitment means that you are stimulating more motor units within a muscle. Okay? And so that is how we are able to keep tension high in a muscle. Now, what we're going to talk about next are a couple of different types of contractions, and I will demonstrate those for you. Okay, so there are two general types of muscle contractions. The first one, isotonic contraction, means that you're contracting this muscle, okay, you're creating tension in the muscle, but the length of the muscle is changing, okay? In one, the length is actually decreasing. That's called a concentric contraction. An eccentric contraction is one where the muscle length, even though you're putting tension there, that muscle length is actually increasing. So let me give you a couple of demonstrations of when this might happen. Okay, so here's the weight that I'm going to be lifting. Now, in this example, let's be talking about this muscle that would be right here. Okay, if the tension that I produce here, the force of my contraction, is greater than how much this weighs, okay, then the muscle length decreases, and I can bring this weight up. That is a concentric contraction. Now let's say instead, let's say that this is very heavy, okay? And so let's say I'm holding it with one arm and it's heavy, okay? So maybe I'm contracting, I'm keeping it from going to the floor, but notice that my muscle length here is increasing, okay? So what that means is that would be a situation where the weight of the object is greater than the tension that can be produced. So even though I'm contracting, this muscle is lengthening. Okay? Now if there was no contraction, it would do this. Okay? There'd be no tension there. So the reason we know there's tension is because I'm slowing its descent, but the muscle is still lengthening. Finally, we have isometric contractions. And that's where the weight of the object is the same as the tension produced. And so the muscle length doesn't change. And so, for example, right here, I am holding this in the air. I have this muscle contracted, it's producing tension. This is not moving. The length here is not changing. So this is an isometric contraction. And those are going to be the different types of muscle contractions.